So we have the lovely Harriet with us today. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Harriet, we are so excited to talk about your journey. It's a new journey for you, and we thought we need to get you on now and talk about it and spread the word.
Yep.
Just gutted that we're not near you to send our children where you are. But you have opened your own SEND school called Earley Springs, spelt EARLEY Springs, and that is also on Harriet's Instagram page if you're interested in looking up further information. Tell us first of all about the name and why it has an extra E.
And also how you came about this, how you came about opening a SEND school, which we don't have enough of anyway.
So I have worked in education for over 20 years. Started out kind of in a mainstream secondary school, teaching science many moons ago.
Fun.
And quite quickly transitioned to a special needs school, a boarding school, predominantly for children with like SEMH difficulties, and discovered that actually that was where my passion lied. I really love teaching children with special needs. Eventually I kind of bounced around. I kind of went from secondary to primary. I trained as a SENCO, and then in essence became a head teacher. I was a deputy head and then a head teacher of a primary school. And I was absolutely living my best life. I was kind of teaching, I was going on holiday in the summer, I was going back, and then all of a sudden my nephew arrived 6.5 years ago. At the age of 18 months, he was diagnosed with autism and global developmental delay, and he's currently non-speaking. And I would say probably since he kind of turned up, joined our family, absolutely crashed. I learnt a lot about myself personally and professionally, certainly for the better. And I would say I have done a lot of reflecting, and I would say I was probably one of those members of staff that actually have sat opposite kind of parents saying, you know, I understand the journey you're going on. I understand that you're telling me your child's masking, you know. In reality, I didn't understand. And actually, I think on kind of Lenny's journey, it's quite, I suppose, humbling for me to kind of take a step back and think, actually, I was quite embarrassed then as a young teacher, as like young Miss Carter, to tell these parents that were sitting opposite me that probably thought, she has got no idea what she's talking about. So kind of fast forward on kind of 7 years, he's going to be 7 in October. We're now at the point where I've opened the provision. So we're taking children from the age of 5 to 13. And the name comes from, so my aunt, Jacqueline Earley, she was a teacher for 40 years in a local village school. And she was one of those teachers that was absolutely loved by everyone. You know, she's taught like the children, the parents, the grandparents, you know, kind of everyone knew her. And she was just incredible. And unfortunately, during COVID, she was incredibly poorly. And to try and support her kind of being so poorly from bed, I worked a lot with her on like the vision and the curriculum and the ethos for the school. And therefore the name Earley, her name was Mrs. Earley, so that's why there's an extra E in the name Earley.
But it works so well.
Yeah,
And it's so special.
yeah, it's really important.
Yeah.
Family's very important, and the part Springs is just purely Lenny. He is like unapologetically him all of the time. If he's not jumping, he's spinning, he's flapping, he's absolutely living his best life. So yeah, Earley Springs comes from my aunt and then from my nephew.
I just find it so, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but that you were doing SEND schooling, like, and then Lenny came along.
I know it's funny how things happen.
I hear this a lot, though. I hear that
Like,
people
you could have got
work
into anything.
Yeah, but you hear that people work in SEN or they look after special needs children and then they end up having their own or a family member or something. And it's kind of like all the pieces puzzled together with your life growing up. So talk us more, obviously I want to hear all about the SEND school, but from more of your educational side. So you said that you hopped around with schools, primary, secondary, head teacher, SENCO. When you started working in I want to hear more about the boarding school, the SEND boarding school. I never even knew that existed.
Yeah, so residential provision. That was a steep learning curve. So as a young teacher who was kind of fresh out of uni, I started teaching in a mainstream provision first, and then in my second year I moved to the residential provision. Then it was before kind of the code of practice, so the children were referred to BESD, so behaviour, emotional and social difficulties. And trying to teach science to a group of 11 to 16-year-old, but it was a boys' school. I think they kind of looked at me like, who is this?
Where has this alien landed from?
Why does she keep going on about chemistry? Like, this is so boring. But actually, I learnt a lot there. And I learnt that actually education is all based on relationships. And if you haven't got that mutual respect and relationships with the children that are sitting in front of you, you've actually got no chance. I mean, because it was residential, so I very quickly tried to build the relationships with the children, and I very quickly discovered that actually I needed to take myself out of the classroom setting to do that. So I used to spend a huge amount of time in the residential setting. So I would teach in the day, and then of an evening I'd go to the residential provision, eat dinner with them. They had like the best dinners, you know, like fish fingers and spaghetti hoops things like that. And then eventually I discovered they would go to judo every Tuesday. Now, I cannot stand like bare feet. Mm-hmm. And in essence, before I knew it, I was in like a gi, I think was what it was called. Yeah. But in essence, it just looked like a large pair of pajamas.
Yeah.
Looking at all these children that had all their feet out, and my feet were out. And before I knew it, they were like chucking me around. And I just thought, I just need to put my seatbelt on and suck this up and just hope that it basically translates into my classroom. And it really did.
That's wonderful.
It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really look forward to Tuesdays. The kids loved it because they'd be like, Miss, we got judo tonight. And I'd be thinking, oh, fantastic. Yeah. It was like in this village hall. But the children absolutely loved it. And I call them children. They're like adults now. Like, it's so strange. Like, some of them are still in touch. You know, they've got families of their own. And I think education's like that. I think if you get it right, it's really right. I think, but the problem is if it goes wrong, it can go catastrophically wrong.
So did you choose to keep working extra hours and spend your evenings with them in the residential to purely build relationships?
Yeah.
And but you wanted to as well, right?
Yeah, and I think
that's rare.
I think then when you then see those relationships actually blossom in your classroom, and actually then they were coming to my classroom like ready to learn, and I'd be like, look guys, if we do this, this and this, you know, we can do this practical. And actually they respected me a lot more.
I was just going to say, I bet they respected you a lot more.
And I think trust is a big thing. And I think for a lot of those young people, actually they didn't have many people that they trusted. So I would always kind of stick to my word. I think that's imperative as well. I think for teenagers, you know, they think, oh God, here comes another one who's, you know, going to promise the world and not actually deliver on it. Yeah, there are some crazy stories from that school.
I can imagine. I want to talk afterwards. I want to hear them all. So how long were you there?
So I was there for 4 years, yeah. And then I went from there to a mainstream secondary school, and that's where I trained as a SENCO. And then I spent another 4 years there. And again, this is another moment in my career when I thought, wow, I was naive. So I'd worked in secondary, and I could not believe the amount of year sevens that were coming in to the secondary school kind of without statutory assessments, without diagnosis. And I'm going to apologise now to my primary colleagues. And I thought, what on earth is happening in primary schools?
Yeah.
And I thought, Joe, I need to learn more about it. I need to get out there. I need to find out what's going on. So I applied for primary school positions, secured one.
In SEN?
Well, it was in SEN, but I then ended up the deputy head of the mainstream school, but it had an SRP attached.
Okay, yeah. Which is?
So a specialist resource provision. So I applied for a SENCO position, and I'd only at this point worked with children really with behaviour difficulties, and they were from the age of 11 upwards. And I landed myself in this provision with 5-year-olds, ASD, non-speaking, and I thought wow. I knew SEN. I've got a steep learning curve. And I very quickly discovered that actually it's the whole setup of the education system that actually, when you think even a child in a mainstream setting, that they going from a very small setting where usually everything's provided for them. So they've got their books, they've got their pens, they've got their pencils. Parents drop them off at the gate. They have their school day. Sometimes they have a one-to-one extra support, and then they go home again. They have the same playtime, same lunchtime. Everything is so rigid. And then they have a 6-week summer holiday, and they're expected to then transition to secondary. And the whole thing is just thrown up in the air. You know, they have to carry all of their equipment. Their parents, they all of a sudden, their parents are just left at home, and they have to kind of transition to school independently.
Sorry, this is exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah,
My son's just started secondary school, and he's diagnosed ADHD. And in his primary school, it was all very baby. He was all very nurtured, looked after. He's had 8 to 9 weeks off, and then he started a new school, small little boy in a big pond, small fish in a big pond. and he's just meant to know what lesson is where, how to get there, hold his bags, here's his locker, here's your phone, off you go, you walk. He walks to school, walks back, and I'm kind of like, I'm tracking him every second. It's a big step.
It's huge.
Well, I remember that trauma of being someone that's neurotypical. So God only knows how neurodiverse children, young adults feel. And as you said, especially ones that are undiagnosed and had never any support during primary, to then jump into secondary. I can't even imagine the trauma.
Yeah. And I think you've got all of that. So all of that, the system type stuff that you're talking about. Then you've got the change in uniforms. So usually that's more kind of, you've got a blazer and a tie, and, you know, they've got to have a certain coloured socks. And actually you then put that aside, and actually they need to build friendships and have that peer group. And, you know, a secondary school isn't easy to one kind of sit in a classroom, and, you know, even the whole teaching, everything about it is so different to primary, and I think that's when there needs to be a really big shift.
How do we shift that, though? What do you mean?
I think the curriculum needs to change.
What do you think there needs to be not so intense when you first go into year 7 from year 6, or what? Not such a long summer holiday, or how do we help that transition?
I think personally, especially for kind of the most vulnerable children in mainstream secondary schools that I've worked in, we've set up, like, in essence, you would call it like a nurture group. So actually remove a lot of the moving around. But actually, I think you should make it the same for neurotypical and neurodiverse children, because actually it's the same thing. You know, everybody's struggling, and then eventually you can kind of filter out from there. But
then that's stopping them making friends, because you're isolating them from the school, potentially. It's quite difficult.
It really is tricky to try and put kind of the whole, I think, because the system is so separate, and there's not there's a huge, so for example, if you're in a secondary school, you would, as a leadership team, you would go out to the primary schools and you would do transition visits. But actually, you know, one meeting with the SEND or one meeting with the head teacher, a couple of meetings where the children potentially come into the school, and it is kind of like a sink or swim situation. It's really, really
basically
tough.
I feel like I've given, like, my son to the lion's den, basically. Like, I've fed him, off you go.
How has he been this week?
It's the beginning of the week.
Well, last week.
Yeah, he really enjoyed it. I mean, he found it very overwhelming, especially when the whole school came, because what they actually do for year 7 is that their first day is just them. So that they get to know the school a little bit, and then the day after, he was really anxious to have, like, all the other children there, but he actually dealt with it pretty well. But he's very good at masking, so you'll never see that at school, how he actually feels. It's when he comes home and medication's worn off and he releases because he's in a safe place, then hell breaks loose. So realistically, I don't know how he was doing. He'll say he's been fine and great,
but is he?
Yeah. You know, he can't really communicate his words so well still, like, because he might be 12 nearly, but he still can't articulate how he feels. So there's only minimal I get from him, so I just have to ride it. It's hard.
What are your thoughts about minimum of 6 weeks? Obviously there's private schools as well that are longer. Like, will you do this in your own SEND school and have the large holidays? Is it a must with the government? I don't know how it all works.
I have kept it the same. Although I'm an independent special school, I have tried my absolute best to keep it the same as other kind of local schools, purely for families. So for siblings, if there's one in a local primary school and actually one's at Earley Springs, then actually you then haven't got that issue with childcare. I do think the summer break's too long. My nephew Lenny, he's transitioned back to school, and he's gone from very much a play-based curriculum to more of a structured education. And I hope those teachers have got their seatbelts on, because that is going to be a bumpy ride. Because it is a long period of time. You know, the whole routine's completely up in the air, and then again you've got to re-establish that routine.
But then there's some children like Hallie that school is the safe place, and even though she absolutely loved the summer holidays and she had play dates and we went on holiday and she was swimming every day, she was buzzing to go back to school, and she seems to have settled in well. I don't really hear much about it, but then you have got those kids that really don't require the summer holidays, and then there's some children that really need the break. So again, you can't, it's different for every child, isn't it?
It's really tough, trying to get the right balance.
So tell us more about Earley Springs. This is a new launch. Tell us all about it.
So I have been really lucky to be able to design the provision from scratch. So in essence, it was an old nightclub like cabaret club.
Cool.
The carpet was like thick, you know, like
red.
It was like a red swirl, and like as you walked on it, it was like
too much beer in there.
Absolutely, yes. I was like, that carpet needs to come out. But because it was a completely open space, I've been able to design it exactly the way I want, which is phenomenal. Yeah. So we've got 6 classrooms. 2 are large with like bifolding doors, so either we can kind of have it open, so kind of like a free flow provision, or we can have them shut for 2 smaller classrooms. We've also got a soft play classroom.
Wow.
We've got an immersive classroom, which is literally like floor to ceiling projectors, which allows, so we can use it as part of the national curriculum or for like a teaching resource, so we can turn it into the solar system or underwater. But actually we could turn it into like a hair salon. So Lenny really struggled with having his hair cut. So I've built relationships with like local community to get their hairdresser to come in and say to parents, are you happy for them to try and have a go? Like, I don't know what they're going to come out looking like. But that's the idea behind it, again, to like turn it into a supermarket. So again, the hope is that actually, although the children are coming to Earley Springs to have those high expectations, in the hope, my absolute dream would be for a child to come with us for a period of time and actually for them to transition back to mainstream. But actually for them to always have one kind of foot outside of our door and into their home lives, because actually that's something that I've learned as a professional and in a personal capacity, that actually a child is with you for 6 hours a day, but actually then as a family, when we try to go food shopping at the weekend or to get his hair cut or to get a new pair of shoes, it's pandemonium. So actually if I can do something to support a family in that capacity, that's exactly what I'm here for. So yeah, we've got an incredible outdoor space. Every classroom has got an outdoor space again, so there's kind of that free flow element. Yeah, we're really, really lucky with the space that we've got.
Do you have OT and sensory rooms and things like that?
So we have, with regards to kind of speech and language, so the school is for children with communication interaction difficulties. So Lenny, as I've said, is non-speaking. He has had, don't judge me for this. Never. He has literally only had 4 NHS speech and language
I still
sessions.
haven't had any, so we understand.
Same. And you just get to the point where actually I've worked with a lot of speech and language therapists in lots of different schools. And actually, you know, for a child to potentially be in a room for 40 minutes, half an hour with one individual, how much of that information is actually kind of goes back to the classroom and to the families and to the teaching team, in my kind of opinion and from what I've experienced, is actually quite minimal. So what I've done is I've written our curriculum to ensure that actually communication is like a thread that goes through the child's entire school day, and we're using a program called CERTS, which is stands for social communication, emotional regulation and transactional support. So kind of alongside that, we also have like preparation for adulthood, so really trying to instill that kind of independence in our like young learners. And I've had quite a few speech and language therapists contact me and say they would be really keen to work with us. If there was a child's EHCP that said specifically that actually they needed a real kind of high-end speech and language provision that we couldn't offer, then I would of course buy it in. But actually I really want to try and embed it in the curriculum and in the child's whole day rather than 1 hour a week. Yeah, that's kind of my...
It makes so much more sense.
Yeah, that makes sense as well, yeah.
So your curriculum, because we've both SEND school shopping. I've kind of been given the start shopping around, and Jade knows that Bailey Bow will be going straight to SEND school. Is that right?
So I've just really got to pull my finger out my arse, get over it, and call the schools.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
I mean, I find it a big deal. She's my baby anyway, going to primary school, let alone a SEND school, primary school. So I just need to get my finger up and call the schools, go and see them, because I haven't even gone to see a school. Because she starts next September, so I'm going to have to be naming a school soon. I don't know if I need to get on a wait list. I don't know how it works. She has her EHCP, but she's at a mainstream nursery, and they have a one-to-one there for her. But she will need full-time one-to-one support. And I just need to get my head around it.
Of course.
It's not about me.
It's tough though.
It is tough.
It's a massive transition.
But I've noticed in the schools that I've seen a few now, none of them fit Callie's bill. Is that even the right term? That none of them fit what I'm looking for. But some, so maybe we'll have to move to Kent, just saying. But some of the SEND schools do the usual academic curriculum, and then some schools don't have a curriculum as far as I'm aware, and they just learn more about independence, how to make a bed, as you said, with the shopping, like learn how to be independent and go shopping, and just learn everyday needs and tasks that we all have to do as human beings. What's your way with it?
So mine's a mixture of the two.
Is it because is it because do you not have to match the requirements of the curriculum? Is it private or is it government?
You mean my school? Yeah, so my school's independent.
So then you don't have to follow a
However, I have written our curriculum based along the national curriculum, because I think actually there are some families, and if Lenny was able to transition back to mainstream, I want those children to have those high expectations. But actually, high expectations can be for a range of different things for a range of different children. So yes, we have got a national curriculum kind of provision. So in essence, what I've done is so 2 of the classrooms are very play based. So imagine like a kind of a traditional reception type year 1 classroom, a lot of free flow, a lot of play based curriculum. So really
learning through play.
Exactly that. And really trying to we had a long time with Lenny when actually someone said to me, Harriet, he doesn't need to communicate. I thought, what are you talking about? And she said, like, at every given opportunity, you are there 1 step ahead of him. So he drinks his drink, you're there you've got a new one ready to go. He doesn't need to communicate. You need to give him those opportunities to actually understand there's a value to communicating. Actually, there's a point in it. So that's kind of the real kind of point behind our play-based curriculum. We've then got 2 other classrooms that's more like a structured approach to try. But again, there's still an element of play-based, so those children will still have access to the outdoor area. But again, to try and get those children ready to kind of learn and prepare them for accessing the national curriculum. We've then got 2 classrooms ready to teach the national curriculum. So the way I'm going to timetable it is it's going to be timetabled similar to a secondary school. So if I think back to like other children that I've worked with in mainstream schools, you can actually be working with a child who is non-speaking, is actually academically incredibly able in maths and music, but actually because of the way they are presenting, they're in a class with a group of children that are academically potentially lower than them. And I've spent a long time trying to teach children, for example, that young person who I'm thinking of in particular, teaching him phonics and teaching him, and he could read and he could sight read, but he had very little comprehension. And I just thought, this is such a waste of time. Again, going back to the national curriculum, it is like, why am I teaching this young person to comprehend? But actually, I know their times table's up to 12, so why aren't I starting long multiplication? It's just, so the idea behind my curriculum is actually, if they need an element of their day in a play base, then they'll be in there. If they then need a period of time in structured, but actually for maths and music, they could go into the national curriculum with different kind of peers, then that's how it will work.
This is unbelievable.
So really you're going to base it on the individual?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're not going to do it by age?
No.
Just by ability?
Yeah.
Because if we give an example, say Bailey Bow comes to you. I mean, are you taking non-speaking? Are you taking non-communicative?
Yeah.
So you say Callie and Bailey both came and their needs are very different. Callie can speak. She can also
do her phonics.
Yeah,
academic.
Can she read?
Yeah.
She can read. Can she write?
Yes.
She
but
can write.
As you were saying, I don't know
what she's understanding.
Yes. I don't know if she's seeing it and she can write it, or she's reading because she's seen it.
And then you've got Bailey Bow, who's non-speaking, non-really communicative, doesn't understand instructions. Basically, in her own world. How do you deal with that? 2 scenarios that are so different in one school.
So you would literally just timetable that completely individually. So I would look at the child's EHCP again and make sure those targets are completely intertwined. So for example, your little one might be in more structured, but then again, there'd probably be an element where actually she'd probably quite like to be in the play-based.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's very sociable.
But she loves playing.
Yeah. And I think, that's a huge part, because we need to work on those social skills as well as kind of everything else. But then kind of what you were just saying about phonics, do you know what? Actually, she might be able to access the year 2 national curriculum at a different part of her day.
Yeah.
So I will, in essence, just completely timetable the school day around the children's needs that we have got at that time.
And you would have 1-to-1 for each child? Or?
No, not necessarily. So again, it would depend on children's needs. So like we are taking children that have like toileting need. That's not something that we shy away away from, children with like medical conditions. That's not a concern.
So it might need, maybe Bailey would need a one-to-one, but say Callie wouldn't need a one-to-one there. So you'll do it all by the individual.
Exactly that, yeah.
What's your thoughts about EHCPs then, going on that? Because you said, as the owner of Earley Springs, you would look at the child's EHCP and then cater to that. I look at Callie's EHCP, not going to lie, I haven't read it thoroughly because it goes in one ear and out the other, but from what I've seen, the OT that came in and the educational psychologist that came in do not know my child that they've seen for half an hour that was having a really good day and playing with her dolly. Obviously, you need to follow the EHCP to kind of know about the child, but what without me saying it, what are your thoughts when you see an EHCP?
So usually the most important parts are the outcomes. However, I was sent one last week by a parent. Their child is in year 4 and the outcomes are, says by the end of EYFS. So I know they're out of date. The problem is ensuring that actually parents trust us, because I think as a parent, and especially as a SEND parent, actually your kind of go-to is kind of fight, because that's all that you have to do is you have to fight to get a paediatrician referral, then to get an appointment, then if you get a diagnosis, if you're looking at medication, then you need an EHCP, then if you go to tribunal, and then you kind of get this EHCP, you kind of get the provision that you want, and it's kind of like, well, I still need to fight. Surely there is something, and I think parents need to understand that actually if there is an EHCP and if you want us to follow those outcomes, then absolutely we will. There are some schools that kind of say, well, unless it's in the EHCP, we can't do this and we can't do that.
I look at the EHCP really as just her placement.
Yeah.
So she's got the school, or she's got those hours with a one-to-one. But then I expect them to, I don't care what the EHCP says. If you think you see her every day, the woman that gave her the EHCP doesn't know her. If you say, well, actually, I think she needs X, Y, and Z, but her EHCP says A, B, and C, I trust you more.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that actually you can edit it, but actually to get it legally changed,
it's not worth it.
The local authority have to, and that is such a journey. And I think, there's a huge amount of change that's being spoken about in the press at the moment. And I think ultimately, that there are some things that need to change. The fact that some people are waiting kind of 3 years for a diagnosis. And then when you think of certain schools, their admissions criteria is so strict. So our admissions criteria is quite broad, and it's more a process really rather than a criteria. So a child will come for a trial, as long as they kind of access our provision, they're happy, they're learning, parents are happy and that they're learning, then we can have that conversation. But there are lots of schools that actually say if you haven't got diagnosed with ASD, then you can't come here, and I just think that's absolutely criminal. A piece of paper doesn't change a young person.
I got told that my daughter was too severe for a school, and it was a SEND school. It wasn't even a mainstream school.
Yeah, it's criminal.
I love the idea that you don't turn away anyone, regardless of needs.
And I think that's the problem, is there's been such a huge drive on inclusion, but actually when you go to special schools, from my experience, some aren't actually as inclusive. No. And I think because they probably, in one hand, have to be like that, because otherwise the local authority will push children potentially their way that they can't actually meet their need. Yeah. But for me, I just think, once you get to know a child, it's very different to actually what you say about reading the EHCP. It's a whole different
it really is. Yeah. So would Earley Springs be, I'm learning the lingo and I've done this, how many times have we done a podcast now? MLD, is that right?
And SLD. SLD is severe learning difficulties.
Yes, and moderate learning.
Yeah. No, isn't it just
Yeah,
LD.
MLD and severe learning. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yes, well done to us. Where would you class Earley Springs? Or either? You're open,
Makes
which is
no
amazing.
Difference. So depending on how the child presents, I think the right setting can actually bring the best out in a child. I think as long as we'll continue to have the most amazing team that works at Earley Springs, and actually we're the right setting for the child, then bring them on.
Because I understand, and I don't know whether this will be a bit controversial when people listen to it, just as an outsider and kind of being like newish SEND parents on the street, would some people disagree with that? Just a question, because they say sometimes if I send Callie to a SEND school, which I know she probably will have to end up, if she was with a child that had severe learning difficulties,
it's always been your worry, isn't it?
She copies behaviour. So that would be as a SEND parent's concern. However, you said with Earley Springs, it's a huge space. You've got sections. So would Callie necessarily
be with them?
Right.
So I think there would be an element of educating Callie on that. So, for example, a parent came to me a couple of weeks ago, said their child was at a really well-known, outstanding special school, and that actually her child all of a sudden had came home and was starting to like self-injure, and that they'd never, ever seen that. And I said, did you speak to your child about it? The child is non-verbal, but, did you communicate that? Actually, we don't need to do those things. We're here to meet your need, and you don't need to behave in that certain way. Don't get me wrong. Lenny does self-injurious behaviours, and when he gets to that crisis point, actually, there's not an awful lot that you can do. Yeah. But I think the way that we will timetable it, and I think it's all about education, that actually that it takes all sorts to make the world go round. And I think, we all meet lots of different people, and actually, there's some people that I've copied their behaviours, and probably some that I would.
It doesn't mean it will stick.
No, not at all. And okay, maybe that's wrong.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying.
But I also, at the same time, don't we learn as SEND parents that every single child or adult that is on the autism spectrum disorder is different?
Yeah,
so,
exactly that.
But I think with Callie, you could tell her to not do that and explain to her why not to.
Whether she accepts that or not. But yes, I'm fortunate that I can do that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think just visuals and, lots of reward. I mean, I love a reward. Anyone tells me I'm doing a great job, I'm the first one there.
Yeah.
But I think, there's a lot to be said for actually educating around it, and rather than kind of just turning a bit of a blind eye to it, like, oh gosh, that's happening, I'm not really quite sure what to do. I think, you've got to be open and honest and transparent. I think like with parents, say, for example, if she came to my school and we kind of witnessed that, I'd be the first one to say to you, this has happened today. We've never seen her do that. I don't know if you've seen it at home. Let's work together to put a plan in place. Yeah.
See, I get no communication.
Because you're in
a mainstream, but I don't get any communication whatsoever. So I genuinely don't know. And then I'll get the odd parent being like, can you speak to your child, please? Because she hit my kid. And I was like, oh my God.
See, my fear is choosing a school and then it not being right.
And I think,
because what have I got to go on? As much as I've said it since day one, I don't know my child like I know my other two typical children. So I might look at it and think, oh, it's great. It'll be this for her. It'll be that for her. And then she goes
looks
there.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's not. Then what? Am I fucked? Do I have to go through it all again?
I think, in essence, yeah. So once the school's named on the EHCP, that's the problem. And I think that's one of the issues.
It's not like this for mainstream. So why do they make it even more difficult for us when our lives are so difficult as it is?
I know. I just don't think they quite. I really can't.
I know you
can't
answer me.
No, but I get it.
It frustrates me.
Yeah, and I think it's. I've got parents at the moment that are going for tribunal to take a certain placement off of their child's EHCP, and actually it's criminal.
And then explain to me how Callie and Bailey both get the same 1-to-1 hours a week.
When their needs are so
different.
different.
Their needs are so different. How many did you get, 15?
I've got no idea. She has them all day long.
Yeah, but how much she meant to have?
Oh.
On her EHCP, it says 15 hours, same as mine. I mean, Bailey can't be left alone for 1 minute.
Yeah.
How is that fair?
It's insane. Yeah, absolutely insane. And I think it's because it's a different caseworker, like you said earlier. It's a different educational psychologist, a different occupational therapist. And I think one of the battles that a lot of the parents that I'm working with at the moment is that actually they've had a speech and language therapist assess their child, and actually it's been quite thorough, or they've had an educational psychologist assess their child, and actually they want that then replicated in the EHCP, and local authorities are then refusing to put the evidence.
Yeah, but surely it all comes down to funding, right?
Unfortunately, so yeah.
So that's why. So how many children can you take?
So officially, on kind of like how big our provision is, we can take 72 children.
Wow.
I think, to be honest, we'll probably cap it at 60.
And how hard will it be for you to pick up your nursery and pop it in North London?
Just asking.
Just asking for a friend.
I'll see. Are there any nightclubs around here?
We'll
I'll
do
find
the digging.
you one.
We'll find that
sticky carpet.
But how long will it take you to cut? There needs to be more of this. If I could, I'd open one. How about franchising?
Maybe we'll talk about it after.
Yeah, we could, couldn't we?
Because I'm so nervous to send my daughter to school. Maybe that's why I've been putting it off.
Yeah.
Well, that's why lots of people home eds as well, don't they?
And to be honest with you, probably one of the main driving forces behind the provision was actually because Lenny can't toilet independently. And one of mine and my family's worries was actually, who is going to be in the toilet with him? And actually, I suppose I've kept that very much at the heart, that actually, you know, we have been recruiting, and very much when I'm kind of meeting potential staff, I think, you know, are you good enough to work with my Lenny? So Lenny,
that's what you go by.
And I think that's imperative. And I think if at any point that goes, that's when this isn't.
But this is a
isn't
scary
right.
thing, and it was one thing I was going to ask later on. There's been quite a few programmes on the BBC and ITV about SEND schools and residentials, and these staff members are horrific, and just I can't even talk about it. The problem is, and I'm sure you can understand, you don't know someone until they're there.
No.
We can all go for an interview. I could get a job, guys, at like Barclays in the city, pretend I am who I am. I've not got a clue about banking, because we can all put on a front and we can be there for half an hour and just power our way through. And it's the same with your staff. Like how you're never going to know, are you?
No. And I think also that coupled with AI
Yeah.
is a real
Exactly.
is a real concern.
Talk about AI. My father-in-law literally had a picture of my husband and his two brothers, and then sent a video. They were moving, they were talking in this AI, and it was from a picture.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's scary, and we're bringing up these gorgeous little SEND children that have no idea what's going on in this world.
I mean, I would say I'm a bit neurotic about
feel
that.
sick
So
after
I said to my business partner, you know, we need CCTV like everywhere.
Yeah.
And he was like, really? And I said, really?
Yes.
Like, because if anybody kind of has any rejection to that, then okay, well, you're not the right person.
Sure.
Go and find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because if you're concerned about anything that I'm going to see on the other side of that, and I think, do you know what? It safeguards the children and it safeguards the staff.
And yourself, for
agree.
you, to feel...
So that's absolutely.
So how many staff have you currently got? Like, how does it work? How many kids are with, how many staff to kids?
So when we are at full capacity, we'll have 1 teacher and 3 teaching assistants. But obviously, again, if the need changes or if we have a child that needs, like you were saying about
3 is for how many children? Or
10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just under double,
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
But say you had someone like Bailey that needed a one-to-one.
Then it wouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Then we just sort that.
So that's amazing, because you've got some places that said to me, well, sorry, we're 1 to 3. We can't.
So do you
is
have
insane.
a wait list at the moment?
So I've had lots and lots of families that are really, really keen.
Gutted.
Should we look at Rightmove and move to Kent?
Do. I'm gutted. Why has this come about when I'm looking at schools? I'm going to be looking for a house.
Do both.
Literally.
So, yeah, we've got lots of parents that are incredibly keen. So we're at the point now where we have to apply to the DFE to be a registered SEND school. And then what happens is Ofsted come out and inspect us.
Yeah.
As soon as that's happened, hopefully we'll pass. And we get our unique reference number, it's called. And then, in essence, local authorities can consult with us. So we have got children on site at the moment. That are being taught.
Wow.
I know. We opened on Thursday, and
It's
it's
like
amazing.
a dream that you have probably had one day and then it's come to life.
and it's like,
and it's all because of Lenny.
yeah, literally. And he has no
No
idea.
idea.
He's literally just living his best life in his
Love
sandpit
him.
or
Will
his
Lenny
paddling
come
pool.
to your
So
school?
that's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. So initially, obviously, we kind of come up with the idea. I say we are kind of come up with the idea. We've set up the school. And we've kind of had those conversations, but...
Is it too familiar?
Well, he is making progress where he is.
Yeah.
Is he a specialist now?
Yeah. I would love him to be with us just so I can make sure that I have
He's safe.
got exactly that. I'm not saying anything derogatory about the school, but I just think if he was with me, you know, I can keep that extra eye. However, he comes to my house at the weekend and he is having 3 bags of quavers, you know, because I am that auntie
You're
that's
that
like,
aunt, yeah.
go on then.
Yeah, damn
and I
straight.
think I don't want him to take advantage of me if I was...
Would he get confused? Is she my teacher or my auntie?
I think so, potentially. And I think, you know, it's...
Maybe if things weren't going so great at his
Then
school,
it would
then
be
it's something
different.
to think about.
But then again, exactly like what you said, like I said to my brother and my sister-in-law, you know, it's, hey, that's a journey. You know, we've then got to, in essence, say to the local authority...
Why?
Yeah. And actually, what is that reason other than
They're
going to
say,
crazy
why
aunt?
do you why do you want to leave there?
Yeah.
What can they give you that they can't?
Exactly
Or an
that.
auntie, but that's not really...
No, yeah, they're not going to pay for that. No problem. So in essence, at the moment, we're an alternative provision.
Yeah.
So the local authorities are basically coming to quality assure us to check that I haven't just randomly made up this curriculum and, you know, stuck all these
Who are you
projectors in a
really?
room, and got this random soft play to ensure that actually the young people that are coming to us can actually be educated to the highest standard that I'm keep going on about. So, yeah, that's kind of that's kind of where we're at.
I want to see the school.
I know.
Have
You
you got
have
it
to
on your
come.
social media?
I have, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you looked at the handle,
Yeah.
Earley Springs,
With an E.
with an E, you will see it. But we should definitely come up for the day.
1,000,000%.
Could we come up and see the school?
Certainly can.
I don't know if I should though.
I know.
Because if I'm seeing other schools and then I'm going to come and see your school, and if I fall in love with your school, I'm fucked.
well,
but
we
then
can
you know
just
what
go
you
on
want.
Rightmove and buy
Yeah, but
a
then
house
there's
there.
not going to be anything that can compare to it.
I think there will be.
Do you?
Well,
And
I'd like to think
also,
so.
maybe you'll see the school and then see things that you really like, and then you'll know that actually that would really work for Bailey. So actually, it could be a really good experience
Don't
for
mind
you.
Kent.
And you have to
Should
bring
we
them.
move to Kent?
Bring the children.
Yes.
Should we?
Definitely.
Can we?
That's the most important part. Like, that's what I say to parents. You have to bring the children.
Yeah, but then they're
because
not going to want to leave, and then we're stuck, and then we've got an hour and a half drive.
I've got some timers
Do you
and
know what my biggest
okay,
fear
snacks.
is? Sorry, before we end. My biggest fear also is when they meet Bailey Bow, for them to reject her. It scares the living crap out of me for someone to be like, I'm really sorry, but she's not right for this school, or we can't meet her needs, and that breaks my heart.
It is breaking, but at the same time, we
get
have to trust that.
1,000,000%. And you know what? I don't want her to go to a school that they can't meet her needs. I totally get that. But that fear of rejection, maybe that's my issues.
Yeah.
But it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, you're her mum.
Yeah.
That's so
So if I don't
understanding.
visit it, I don't have to deal with it, but I have to deal with it.
And I
have
do
to deal
get
with
that,
it.
you know, and some of the families that I've been working with, that's one of like the biggest battles that I've actually had. That actually, Lenny's had a journey, but actually it's been relatively simple, and that's terrible to say. Like, his journey has been quite easy. Like the fact he got his diagnosis, and actually everybody's journey should be like that.
100%.
But you know, I've got young people and families that I'm working with at the moment that actually every school in the county has been consulted with, and they've all said no to a 5-year-old, and the local authority are saying, you know, maybe you should consider home ed. You know, I understand for a child who's at the age of 11, they've tried secondary school and it's just
what
too
are they
much.
saying? That no one can meet her needs?
They've then tried the neighbouring local authority, and they've all said no as well.
It's so unfair on
terrible.
this poor child. I understand, as you said, about the home ed. If they've tried and tried and school's not for them.
But
Yeah, then it's
but mainstream have to take you, I thought.
Yeah, so, well, in essence, so what happened is they consulted with mainstream, then it went back to panel, and panel said she needed a specialist.
but the
and then
specialists are refusing her. Oh,
So they're going to have to move. They're going to have to come to
swap
Kent.
house swap.
Literally, she has.
Has she?
She's with us. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
stop.
wow,
Yeah.
you're amazing.
All right, so I might see you in Kent. You never know.
Well, what a success
Yeah,
story. Honestly,
unbelievable.
you're amazing. It was all down to Lenny. He came into your world for you to help so many other families.
I've got
And
goosebumps.
so have I. And SEND parents will be so grateful for you. And you should put a big pat on your back
Yeah.
because you're
Thank you.
amazing.
Honestly.
So next trip, next stop, Kent.
Kent.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.